The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Tuesday, May the 5th, 2020. Thanks so much for joining us. You obviously could have been anywhere in the world today, but you chose to come hang out with me, and I always, as always, greatly appreciate that. A couple of stories and topics, rather, that I have not gotten a chance to speak on because I really have grown weary and tired of the intra-left squabbles. You know, there are some topics that are fomenting to the top ever so slightly, and what I normally do is just wait till it's a furor. Anyway, enough caveats. I was reading an article in the Federalist yesterday. It was an interview between Matt Stoller, a journalist, and Cigar, I can never pronounce his name, from The Hill, from The Rising Show on thehill.com. And the article was the same honestly tired argument about whether or not there can be a left-right coalition of working people to fight back against the ruling elite. And the article went right into the same excuses that that often are given in terms of the impediment to such a coalition. Now, I'm taking my time with this because I have quite a few thoughts on it. And my primary thought, I guess I could just give you my primary thought and move on. But my primary thought is that there will never be a left-right coalition that is led, here's a caveat, that is led by people in the media class, the consulting class, the political class, or the commentary class, basically us podcasters, us YouTubers, those of us who are journalists, who write for whatever outlet, those of us who basically are now pretty comfortable in this pandemic. You know, you got to call a spade a spade. I don't have anything to worry about now. Not now, you know, because, you know, I've created my life to live on as little as possible with 3 kids, for one. But then 2, I've got lucky, and right before the pandemic, enough patrons came in so that I didn't have to go out and get a second, third job like I have had to do all of my life. So I'm pretty lucky. And for all intents and purposes, I am pretty much at the middle bottom of the commentary class. It only gets higher from here. And everyone above me, with all these hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and all of these people with the major platforms, you know, The Hill is a major platform. Rolling Stone is a major platform. And I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just putting this conversation in perspective. None of us have a goddamn thing to worry about right now except for staying healthy versus you, the listener, who you may be an essential worker out in the field right now, in the field of the pandemic, right? In the, you know, doing your normal routine of going door to door, dropping off mail, whatever your essential work is, you don't have the luxury that I have. And I think that's important in context of the conversation around the left-right alliance and the problems of the left-right alliance. I think those differences, I mean, quite frankly, it's a class distinction at this point. Those of us who are able to stay home and those of us who can't. And so here's the problem. The reason I do not believe that there will ever be any leadership or coalition that comes from this class of elitists that I'm included in, even though I'm just like a latest entry into it, but I'm in there. I have the luxury of sitting behind my microphone in my home office and talking to you every single day and not have to worry about my bills. And I appreciate it. But there's too many of us in this commentator class who have this argument every so many years about whether or not we should have this left-right alliance. And the truth of the matter is none of us are qualified, or none of us are going to get out there and be about what the hell we talk about. I haven't seen it. I haven't, like, and the reason the reason I'm talking about it is because even doing this commentary is getting tiresome. I'm getting weary with the commentary thing, because the truth of the matter is we have these arguments every so many years, right? And all it does, it creates ideological rigidity amongst the commentator class, but it never, ever leads to an actual coalition of working people to tear down the ruling elite, who are basically out to kill all of us in the name of their profit margins. The ruling elite aren't going to distinguish between a commentator behind a microphone at home in the pandemic and an essential worker. They want all of us out there laboring or consuming. But the problem is that we allow these conversations to be headed up by people like me, who, quite frankly, are not qualified to lead these conversations, because we're not in the working class, because we're not workers. We're elitists. We are all sitting behind in the comfort of our goddamn homes, while the real people, the real workers, are out there putting their lives on the line. But you want to ask some elitist ass commentator about a coalition of working people when you could just pick up the goddamn phone and ask working people. Sorry. It's really kind of hitting a nerve, because, like, goddamn, how many times are we going to have this conversation and nobody actually build a coalition to go out here and defeat the ruling class? That's because you're asking the wrong people. And the people you need to be asking are people like Christian Smalls, the young man who led the protest against Amazon and lost his job. He led the strike against Amazon because Amazon would not provide them with PPE in the middle of a pandemic, and people were getting sick, and they built a coalition, and they probably don't care. None of the people who joined with Christian Smalls probably gives a damn about your politics. They don't give a damn about the subtle nuances between the differences between a socialist and a communist, or between a communist and a Marxist-Leninist, or they don't care about your critique of whatever. All of this theory that's going around, everybody arguing on Twitter about shit that doesn't mean anything to the actual workers who are standing in a plant that is not providing them with the basic level of protection that they need to not die in this pandemic. But here we are yet again ruminating about this left-right coalition that will never be led by the likes of me and all of these commentators, all of these journalists, all of these elitists who are living the lavish life of being a theoretical leftist. A theoretical leftist who won't probably pick up anything and get into anybody's streets. Talking with my wife on a regular basis, I'm like, babe, I don't know how much longer I can actually talk about this without actually literally going into the streets. Because I don't like to repeat myself over and over again. And I tell you, the only thing that keeps me tethered, is the fact that my children need me at home and not in jail. But that's a whole different conversation. Let me dial it back. It's too early in the episode. I usually save this for the patrons. Let me read this passage and show you how utterly fatuous and futile is actually the word I'm looking for. Futile this conversation is, because we've been having this conversation for years. And honestly, we probably have been having the conversation for decades, long before you and I were born. The problem is that the conversation has been headed up by eggheads, navel gazers, people who like theory because theory could get them a job as a writer, instead of people who are actually on the line in these warehouses, putting their lives at risk right now. Those are the only people we should be listening to at this moment. Which is why I'm like, you're going to see this show evolving and changing more and more and more. I'm going to be talking to the actual people who are out there. And whenever I bring like an academic on, that's for me. That's to keep my sanity. I'm gonna bring academics on because it helps keep me nice and keep me at home instead of in the streets. Maybe I should stop bringing the academics on. I digress. Here's a passage from the Federalist. It says, and this is Sagar Njiti. I don't know how to pronounce your name, brother. I'm not trying to insult you. He said the left would have, here's a question. What compromises would the left reasonably make to the right? What compromises would the right have to make to the left? Here he says, the left would have to conclude that not all Republicans are racist, and the right would have to concede that it's generally agreed upon economic orthodoxy is both incorrect and wildly unpopular with American voters. The chief reason I'm not particularly optimistic that any left-right coalition is possible is because the commanding heights of American culture hold that Republicans are racist. Why they hold this widely held view that it will be nearly impossible for any leftist to offer an ounce of good faith to the right without being denounced as a racist enabler. It is much easier, as evidenced by the emergence of Josh Hawley, American Compass, American Affairs, National Affairs, and an entire new generation of right-leaning folks in D.C., for the right to move left on economics than the left to move right on culture. Same goddamn argument we've been having for years. And here's why the argument is meaningless. When you talk to actual workers whose lives are on the line, nobody is asking about your politics. They're just asking, are you with us or are you against us? Do you see the problem? Or are you oblivious still? Are you okay with this? That this company is doing to us? Or do you want to fight against it? Are you a liberator or are you a bootlicker? That's it. That's it. On the ground level, nobody is thinking about the nuances of economic theory. And on the ground level, you better watch your goddamn mouth before you say something racist, because it's going to end totally different than the argument on Twitter. You understand what I'm saying? All of these things, when you are in a warehouse working with people whose lives are on the line, the racist is going to shut his goddamn mouth up and not say anything racist, because it's not going to go well with that. It's going to take care of itself. And the only thing that really matters, are you going to strike with us? Or are you going to uphold this system? But we don't have these, but all of our conversations are lofty, intellectual ruminations of people who are giving their commentary from the comfort and the safety of their homes and their six-figure salaries and their publications and this leftist magazine and this right-leaning magazine and this, all of the conversations have been held and led by people who would never put on a mask and hit the streets with hundreds of thousands of people to literally bring this system to its knees. I don't know. Who do you think you should be listening to? Who do you think you should be talking to? People like me who are comfortably streaming from their home. First of the month came, Patreon re-upped, I could pay my bills. People sitting in their nice homes in Brooklyn and all these nice offices in New York, and they're making their hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some of them making that amount a month. Or people whose lives literally depend on whether or not they can get some concessions from management. This conversation is just going to repeat itself, and it's just going to be a tool of positioning a voice in a particular niche. That's all it serves. That's why I don't really care to participate in it anymore, because I don't even want to hear myself talking about it, except for the fact that I'm tired of talking about it. And we're talking to the wrong people. Talk to the people on the ground, and I guarantee you, they don't even know most of them probably don't even know we exist. Here we are. How removed and self-absorbed are we? We are the far removed elitists giving commentary on the lives of people who don't even know we exist. And we're trying to say how best to organize them. As you can tell, I'm tired of talking about it because we're talking to the wrong people.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
All right. Well, the least I can do is thank you who actually make this possible. Give me a chance, an opportunity to let go of all of my anger and my rage into this little microphone that I have. Very special welcome and thank you to all of our newest patrons. Very special welcome aboard to Jeffrey Williams, Adara Blake, Tara Daly, Joe Olbrick, Jan Clausen. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. Leah Boggs Jackson. Thank you also for becoming a patron. And Carl Anderson. Thank you for becoming a patron. You too. Well, let's bop. Everybody, let's bop. Yeah. Here we go. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, exclusive interviews, uncut and unedited, with no advertisements like you're going to hear right here. Woo. Yeah.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Bounce.
Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back. Welcome back. So anyway, it's not that I feel like my job is useless. Definitely don't believe that. I don't believe that the commentary class and the podcaster class, I don't believe that we're completely useless, but I do believe that we are mistaken for actual revolutionaries when we are elitists. Every single one of us. We are all elitists because we have the privilege and the luxury of just giving commentary on what's going on in the world. I mean, how far removed are we from some of your real experiences? Now, if every now and then I get it. I'm not telling you to stop being my patron or stop listening to anybody's show, but honestly, we're just a conduit for your anger. That's all we are, right? And then maybe we can explain things and you just kind of, I mean, there is a need for intellectual stimulation and somebody to be able to put into words what you've been thinking and feeling for the longest time. I get it. I buy books all the time and I'm like, man, I'm so glad I spent that money on that book because it really just did something for my brain. I get it. But in this particular conversation, we're talking out of turn. In this particular conversation, when the rubber meets the road and people are actually taking action, I don't know. I mean, maybe you've been in this longer than I have and you've been listening to the commentary longer, and maybe you could think of a commentator who actually led something, who actually got there and put themselves on the line with everybody else. Right. But we all, even in that case, we're doing so from a position of privilege because we're not the ones who could potentially get fired. Now, there's a way to address this, right? I was on a forum Friday night that really solidified it for me. And as we were talking about mutual aid organizations, raising funds, strike funds, right? To make sure that we give some of this same protection. I mean, that's what this podcaster and commentator and journalist world, those journalists who still have jobs, those independent journalists who fared better than the corporate journalists. But I digress. That's not the point. The point is we can extend some of this privilege to strikers by creating funds so that they can actually take the risk of striking. Like, how dare we call? This is why I never really got behind the call for a general strike. Because how dare we call for people to put themselves on the line? How dare we as commentators, journalists, the media class, the political class, put somebody else on the line to take a risk that we ourselves are not taking? I mean, so long as my patrons still like what I say, I can pay my rent. right? And I got to pay my rent because I'm just, I'm renting a house from one man who, it's not an association. It's not a whole complex, So how dare I call for a rent strike when I wouldn't and couldn't, if I wanted to, put myself and wouldn't have to because I get paid. That's the realization that I think we're not really getting from all the people who are at the top of the heap in these conversations. And the irony of it is all of the people, all of us who are at the top of the heap in these conversations, they don't even know us because our worlds are so separate. Ask a worker at Amazon. Maybe I've got one fan in all of Amazon employees. Ask them if they know the Benjamin Dixon Show. They're not going to know who the hell I am. And ask the people at Walmart. They're not going to know any of these commentators who are suggesting and making a living off of telling people how they should manage their struggle between labor and capital. Most of the people who are striking, most of the people who are organizing probably never listened to any of us a single day, never heard any of us a single day, never read any theory, and probably only know Marx from something they heard in passing, listening to radio as they pass by Rush Limbaugh talk about communism. That's it. And yet we have erected ourselves. And here's where the problem it's nothing wrong with the commentary itself. It's nothing wrong with them not knowing us. Maybe we're just not popular enough. I get that. But here's what we are doing. We are raising millions of dollars for these shows, for these commentators, for these journalists, for these outlets, for these magazines, hell, for these campaigns. And how much of it is actually going to change the things that we talk about every single goddamn day? Whew. Maybe I need to take a break because the inevitable the logical conclusion of my thought process is that we need to be in the streets. And every single one of us with a platform who's been talking about it all this time, we better be the very first people out there. Something I told some revolutionary friends of mine. Don't be the only one out there with your guns. And this is what I mean. Like, people will hype you up and then sit their asses home while you're out there fighting a revolution of one. They made it sound like it's going to be a revolution of a million. Turns out it's just you out there getting arrested or getting shot by the popo, by this military industrial complex that's just ready to exercise, to play with all their new toys. But we sit here and I'm giving you I'm telling you what I feel on the inside as well as why you shouldn't listen to me. I'm telling you exactly what is on my mind. Like, unless don't listen to a single person who's talking about striking unless they're participating in the strike themselves. Show us some receipts. And don't listen to any of us who are talking about striking unless we are going to take some of these millions of dollars that we're raising and put it into the hands of strikers so that they can pay their bills. This is how you're going to see the ruling elite of the left. The ruling elite of the left, let's see if we put our money where our mouth is. How much have we been donating? How much have we been donating to strikers? How much have we been donating to mutual aid organizations? How much have we just been donating in general? Versus just building an empire of our own. Where we're building empires where we talk about doing something and never do it. I'm sorry. 5 years of me doing this podcast is apparently the limit. Because I can't keep repeating the same thing over and over again. If there's not an evolution in our thought and an evolution in what we're doing and an evolution in our results, then why the hell are we doing it? You could take some of our clips from 5 years. It's like pretty much a 4-year cycle, not even 5 years. There's a 4-year cycle where you could take clips from 4 years ago, swap out a few names, and we're saying the same shit over and over again, not affecting anything. Except for, I get it. We give you a place to release your rage, and we give you a place to have someone say what you've been thinking in a way that maybe you have not been able to think it. I'm not saying that we're useless, but what I'm saying is we're not the people who should be talking about leading any kind of coalition, because we're in a privileged position that we don't experience. We're not experiencing what those people experience. We're not workers. We're not. We're commentators. If you want to know what a coalition of workers should look like, talk to some workers. Not a single one of us. Now, here's the thing that we can do. Here's something that we can all participate in, especially the commentator class, the ruling elite of the left. I mean, the cash that is flowing into the arms of the left. I digress. That's not what I'm talking about. What we can all do without putting other people at risk, or at least putting them at risk that we're not going to take ourselves, is that we can cut our consumption. Every single one of us can cut our consumption down to basically what we need to live. If we could cut our consumption, and it's going to be harder said than done, especially when you're locked in your house and you're bored out of your mind. You know, you're going to be buying movies and stuff, but we can cut our consumption down to what we need to live. If we do that, continue to do that, we bring this system to its knees faster than anything else. This is a consumer economy. 75. Well, it's slowly it's changing right before our eyes. But up before the coronavirus, this was about a 75% consumer based economy, and our ability to bring these capitalist pigs to their knees is really based on how much we continue to consume. Because so long as we're going out to the club, so long as we're going out popping bottles, so long as we're going out buying this, buying that, so long as we're going out buying the latest video games, so long as we're going out buying the newest clothes, so long as we're going out buying cars, buying homes, buying all these kind of things that I'm sure there's some commentators that are buying homes, but it ain't me. But I digress. But so long as we're out here consuming at the same levels that keeps and creates and recreates billionaires over and over and over again, that keeps pouring trillions of dollars into the hands of the ruling elite, so long as we keep doing that, they will continue to have the economic power to suppress us and to crush us and to buy politicians and to buy police organizations around the country. So long as we keep giving them access to our resources, they will continue to rule us. And so one of the number one places where we can all honestly stand in solidarity without putting people at risk or putting them or asking them to take risks that we commentators and journalists and media heads and political elite, those of us on the left, we will never take those risks. But the thing that we can all do in common without the hypocrisy of pushing you out there to do it and we're not doing it is a consumer strike. Refuse to buy. Refuse to buy. I mean, and we can't even consider it like a boycott. It has to be across the board. What if we just refuse to buy anything more than what we need to survive? The problem is that we have all been so efficiently programmed as consumers, even those of us who know all of the nuances of economic theory and Marxist theory, and we write about it, we talk about it, and we understand the role of, but we always generally leave it at labor. But the real culprit in this corporatist system is consumption. We can bring this entire country to its knees by simply refusing to consume more than what we need to survive. Period. But alas, that is probably going to be the hardest thing to break free of, because we have all been programmed to be good consumers. Every single one of us.
We'll make it up. You put us together. We'll make it up. You put us together. We'll make it up. You put us together.
So, yeah, all right, that's it for the public show. I am going to be vacillating back and forth between intellectual conversations with scholars, because I think that's my own personal therapy to keep me from jumping the shark and just speaking what I'm feeling at any given moment. That said, that's the end of the public show. Patrons, stay tuned after this music. We will we'll continue with another half hour of content. Everyone else, thank you so much for listening to the show. Be sure to share, like, and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.